Let's start by you guys giving us a quick intro, a bit about yourselves, and then we'll move on to the panel discussion. Okay?
Hiya, my name is Gwen Diagram. I'm a software tester from Leeds in the UK, and I co-run a little testing conference over there called the Leeds Testing Atelier, so try and match DIY and punk vibes to the tech scene, which works really well because tech is a punk industry.
Hi everyone, my name's Alison Coward. I am based in London. I have a consultancy called Bracket, and at Bracket I help teams to work better together. So I do a lot of workshop facilitation, a lot of teaching people how to run workshops, and general coaching and consultancy on how teams can do their best work together. I've also written a book, A Pocket Guide to Effective Workshops as well.
Oh, I want that book. I'm going to get it. Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm a lean agile consultant and coach, helping organizations to use agile and lean better. I've written 2 books, one that was just out now on the hospital whose story I told yesterday, and one on Kanban, which is my specialty. I'm also very interested in something called mob programming, which is closely related to teams. So.
Awesome, thank you very much, sir. So the first question goes out to Gwen. State some major principles of agile testing for us.
So, Alan Page has the 7 principles of modern testing. My idea of what testing is it's a tester is in a team to help deliver quality software better. So I do a lot of automation. I believe that testers should help with automation and a lot of pairing with developers to help them write quality software early instead of being at the end. Testers at the end of the process are not good. It's bad. Yes.
Thank you for that. And Alison, question for you is there ever suggested to use waterfall over Scrum? And if yes, why is that?
Right, okay, so the first confession I should make is that I'm not an Agile expert at all. So all of those terms, Agile, Waterfall, Scrum, don't come into my work. Am I allowed to Google the answer? So I work primarily with teams that have a remit to develop creative ideas and develop them together. I would say that perhaps a lot of the principles that I use do align with Agile, although I like to be process agnostic. I think that we should build processes around the team, around the individuals on the team and the context that they're in. So I would never ever give a preference over any process such as Scrum and Waterfall. I would say that actually we need to look at what the team needs to do and who is on the team, and then we'll work around the process. I like that kind of sequence: people, process, technology, and in that order we look at the people first, then we look at the process that fits, and if there's any technology that can support that, then we'll bring that in.
I can probably answer the question about waterfall and agile, or at least give an opinion about that. First of all, you should all find the original waterfall paper by Dr. Winston Royce, written in 1970. So he has the diagram, the famous diagram of the waterfall, that's on page 1. And then you turn on page 2 and read the first sentence after that. You know what it says? It says, I believe in this concept in theory, but the implementation above is risky and invites failure. So he spent the rest of his career going around saying to everyone, that was not what I meant.
We know.
Is that,
we are here.
Is that God speaking? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, but that said, I also am very pragmatic. So if you have something that you're going to do that is very well established, you know exactly what you're going to build and exactly how you're going to build it, then it might be feasible to actually plan all of that up front. However, most things that we do in IT is not like that. That's why it's called software development, because we are not manufacturing things. That's been done before. If you want to manufacturing something, then you do Control-C on Word XE, and then you do Control-V. Now you manufactured a new copy of Word. Right? But we are doing new things that's never been done before in a new context with new people. So in order to do that, you need to build a process that allows for experimentation and finding new ways. And the best way I know of doing that is to get a great team together and have them think, they give them the opportunity to think about that.
Thank you. And this question goes out for you again, Marcus. So can you name some methodologies of development where you have used the Agile model? I mean, I heard your talk, yes, and you have used some in Indonesia, but I'm sure that not everybody in the room was here yesterday and heard your speech.
Yeah, no, this is my default model to go to, and just because it ties nicely into what I just said, because I think that very often, actually no one knows what we're going to build or what will work best until we've done it. So for me, Agile has given me a way to iterate really fast through a solution and try something out, see if it works, and then get feedback from that. In fact, if I was to summarize Agile in one word, it would be feedback. Getting feedback, reacting to feedback, changing your process based on that feedback. That's what Agile is all about. And so this is how I've been using it all along. I just stopped quit an assignment at Spotify, which you probably have heard of. They are not using the Spotify model, by the way, just so you know. They have, of course, grown past that. So they have done other things. But that was very interesting to see a company built from Agile, because the first 4 people, they knew Agile really, really well. So that started already there. So even the CEO, Daniel Ek, he would know Agile principles in a really deep way. So that's very interesting to see.
Thank you. Do you have any questions from our crowd?
Hi. I would like to discuss something a bit different. I mean, okay, I'm fan of processes, but let's discuss about people. In all Agile conferences and conferences I go, I see and I discuss about convincing people, convincing teams, convincing, etc. Why is so difficult to convince about Agile, about testing, about team working, etc.? And what is the most difficult part of it?
So I'm going through this at the moment. I'm trying to encourage people to be themselves and push back to be able to deliver better software. It's difficult because people are apathetic. Like, they've gotten to the point where they don't care anymore sometimes, and that's what I'm struggling with. I need to help rebuild the culture where people will say, like, we don't want to deliver that for these reasons, like, we want to deliver good quality software. And so, yeah, to counteract that, I try and run workshops to teach people stuff. So I'm running a lot of security workshops at the moment so people can learn about security and push back and say, that's not secure, like, we don't want to do that. And just try and expand their skills so that they feel good again and they want to be involved.
I think that people never like change done to them. They want to be part of the change. So, you know, if you have a desire to improve a process and you're saying to people, we need to improve it, if they can't see the relevance, then they're not going to get engaged. What I like to do with teams, always, before I go in and start suggesting that they change the way they work, is I encourage teams to take a step back and look at the big picture. It's something that teams don't often get the opportunity to do because they're so busy, focused on their day-to-day work and focused on their detail, that they don't get to see really the kind of the bigger vision and the end point that they're working towards. So my tip is always to get a team in a room, take a step back and say, what is it that we're trying to achieve together, and align that way. And then when you've already aligned on the goal, that's when you can start thinking, okay, this is how we're going to do it together.
Why do I go after you? You said everything I wanted to say. No, but I wholeheartedly underline that. But your question was also around why is it so hard? And I think there's 2 answers. First of all, the thing that we are trying to change is actually your mindset, which is the way that you view the world. That's a big thing to change. And as you said, no one wants that done to you, right? They can most definitely change. Anyone that has had a kid, for example, that's the most horrible boss you can ever have. Why would you do that to yourself? Yeah, they see the higher value, right? So that's a thing I think is really important. And tying into that, did you read that Google surveyed all their teams, all their software teams, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, or something like that? What was the #1 trigger for a successful team? Uh-oh. If you want to know that, go to Alison's talk. That's super interesting. But there's one thing that was beneficial for all teams that was successful at Google. Segue. No, I will not tell them. Go to the Alison's talk and you will know what that was.
I think a lot of the time people haven't been able to have control over things before either. They've had bad management using the carrot and stick method and punishing them for stuff. And so they don't trust you because you're just another person coming in and probably trying to punish them. And so you need to win their trust by showing them that you can have a really fucking awesome time delivering software.
I'm not going to ask how, but okay. It's gonna take time to discuss.
Well, I think one of the things, and this is a sort of one of the things we don't really talk about, this is sort of looking at the soft skills. When you sort of look at somebody and you think they're being difficult, it's very, very challenging to try and see things from their point of view because you just see somebody who's kind of sticking their heels in and not wanting to change. If you switch that and think, okay, why are they acting like this? What is the reason? Have some empathy for why they might be resisting or being difficult or challenging you. And rather than think, how can I get someone to do this? Think, how can I help them to do their job better? How can I help to make their life easier? And when you can't start switching the conversation around that way, then the opportunities for engaging with them opens up.
And just adding to it, I mean, this is a key question, I think, because this is something that we all will run into. But I think also showing vulnerability and humility over the fact that I don't know what will work best for you. So rather than me pushing, here's how you do Scrum, pushing that on you, rather invite you to I don't know, we should probably get stuff out faster. That will give us this and this. Maybe you know how to. That was something that I experienced very, very concretely in the hospital in Indonesia because I know nothing about hospital management. And all of a sudden I was leading a management team for a hospital. So the only thing I could say was I don't know how to do this. And all of a sudden a nice little cooperation occurred where they before wanted me to just tell them.
My next question would go to all three speakers. What is the biggest challenge you have ever faced in your project while handling the tester team, the Scrum team members?
I'll be very concretely. I once had I introduced a working process limit. So we said you can only have 5 cards in this column. And someone came to that morning meeting and she had 20 cards in her hand. And I said, okay, but you can only choose 5. And they can not only be yours. And she got so frustrated that it ended with her just throwing the cards on the floor and walking out of there. That was really bad coaching from me because I had not explained the benefits of that. So it was a real learning experience from me. But after a while, she got on board again. So she was probably frustrated with other things as well. But I was really taken apart by that. That was strange.
So it's probably my first Scrum Master. I was doing waterfall and I was running, my project, and we were having a really decent time in my eyes, and we were delivering software even though it took 8 months and stuff like that. And then we had this Scrum Master come in, and she just wanted to change everything, and she was full on you need to come to stand up and everything like that, and I resisted. So it was probably me that was really problematic because I'd always try and pick holes in her argument. She'd be like, Scrum has no rules. And then she'd be like, you have to do this. And I'd be like, you said that Scrum had no rules, so we don't have to do anything. And and yeah, in the end, though, she won us over by us not having to work overtime all the time. And that changed my life. And so that's why I don't take 8 months to deliver software anymore.
And Alison, what would you say is the difference between the agile and traditional way of
Well, again, I mean, I can't speak specifically to any kind of methodology or process, but the way that I work, again, as I say, maybe aligned to Agile principles, is that it's much more inclusive. It's much more collaborative. It's much more, there's no kind of hierarchy, there's a lot more of a balance there, and the emphasis is on equal contributions, making sure that everybody can contribute and get involved. I mean, as I say, I can't speak specifically to the methodology, but I would say that those are the principles in terms of the way that we're working and the way that the world needs to change. We need to work in a sort of much more agile, with a small way, quickly, more dynamic, because of the problems that we're facing, and we need multidisciplinary teams to do that.
And Marcus and Gwen, what would you say are the differences between Agile and Scrum?
So Scrum is a agile method. So I actually very often nowadays go back to the Agile manifesto, because you can ask yourself, what is Agile? That's a bit of a tricky question, but when you have the Agile manifesto, it's really easy to answer. Agile is doing software development according to the Agile principles. That's all it is. One way of doing Agile is Scrum. And Scrum has a lot of rules. Was that you being that difficult? I can remember. So Scrum has a lot of rules. Not a lot, it's 9, I think, but something like that. This is how you do it if you're doing Scrum. And if you're reading the Scrum guide, it actually, the last sentence in the Scrum guide has always been, I've not checked the last year, but it's always been, you can do other things when what's described in this guide, but then it's not Scrum. That's not important if you're not selling Scrum. If you're selling Scrum, that's super important, because otherwise you cannot guarantee the result of the thing that you're selling. I totally get that. But for the rest of us, we don't care. We do stuff that gives us value faster. Scrum works really great in some cases, and Kanban and other methods and flow-based approaches worked in other methods. So pick the tool that is best for your situation.
So Scrum, a lot of the time, is a certification, where Agile is a way of living. So you can apply Agile to your home life and see improvements. One of my friends, Sally, talks about Agile. So she's got to talk about Agile ADHD, and her partner has really bad ADHD. And she applied it to her home, and he found structure and started being able to live. It's amazing. So Agile, you can apply it to a lot of things. Scrum, it's very much like, I don't know, you wouldn't try and apply Scrum to building, like making sandwiches or something, but Agile you could apply to a sandwich shop, but yeah.
So we have time for one more question. Anyone?
Hello. So I've been to many conferences around the world, Europe basically, but yesterday it was the first time that I heard so many times here the word Spotify. And here it was the first word that I heard when I came into the room. And also our company, based in the very beginning, their, let's say, scaling in this so-called Spotify model. So if you read a bit of resources around the internet, it's something with, let's say, a negative flavor nowadays. But the thing is that even negative advertisement is still an advertisement, and a quite strong one. So what I would like to ask is, what else could we do, we in the Agile community, in order to promote success stories like Spotify's? Because to be honest, sometimes we need to sell it. We need to sell it to stakeholders, upper management, and Spotify sells. Spotify story sells. We need to do something more. What could we do?
Yeah, so I worked for Spotify 2 times 1.5 years. So I've been contractor at them for 2 years. And I think the reason it's being picked up is that they wrote about it. Full stop. 2012, they published an article when they were about 400 people, mind you well. So when they were about 400 people, they wrote an article, and they had a big name called, his name is Henrik Kniberg, and he's like a very famous Agile author, and he wrote that article together and made it super famous. So I've been to China to a company with 70,000 developers that wanted to implement the Spotify model. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. So interestingly enough, I've been thinking about the same thing, because what I heard many times around this conference is that that is a best practice, and Spotify, and our industry is craving best practices. We want something and just do that and it will work. It will not happen. I promise you, you are not Spotify. So what we can do maybe is to be inspired by others and see, oh, that's a good idea. I'm stealing a little bit of that and a little bit of that. But you have to look beyond what they did and think about why they did that. Because they had a very particular problem that they wanted to solve at that time. And they, of course, gone past it. So that's, and now they spend a lot of time. I see many speakers from Spotify going around and saying there's no Spotify model. That's an awesome talk by my friend Marcin Florian, by the way. There's no Spotify model, and he talks about the principle that it's built on instead. So to your question, how can we promote this in other? I think like just writing about it and writing about our mindset and how we apply it. I think that's a really good way. Speaking about it at conferences. However, should we? Because I don't know if we ever will have the one method to apply to all situations. If you were for the David Snowden talk this morning, you would hear that we are talking about complex systems, meaning that if you run a software project again, it will not be the same thing. And then you do it again, and it will not be the same thing again, even if you're building the same thing. So what method would support that? It will not be a very descriptive method. It will not be something that do this and you will not fail. But it will be rather something that we've been talking about a lot here, like sense and respond, and we need to try something and learn from that. So that's how I would think of it.
Just to add to that, there's an article which has really inspired me. I think it's on a website called InfoQ, and it's titled "Don't Copy the Spotify Model," which is perfect. It sums that up.
So I saw Spotify speak quite a while ago, and one of the parts that I really took from the Spotify model was everyone was on call. But the reason that happened at Spotify was because everything was on fire for a while, and people were tired, and so they needed to add more people on call. Hopefully where you work isn't like that. But people talking about this kind of stuff helps, and people love applying a model. If people have a model, then they can visualize it and they can apply it. So, which is why things like SAFe, because that's like a proper model, isn't it? Like, people love that. So yeah, design your own model. Yeah, because it's fun as well, designing models. It's really fun. So there's starting to get a few conferences around like designing strategy models and stuff. There's one called Map Camp, which I want to go to.
When you said that, I just want to emphasize also, when you do that, because absolutely find your way, but don't find the way, because hopefully we will change it in the future, right? Imagine that we find a way now that would last from now until forever. That will not happen. Stuff change around us, we change, the problems we're solving are changing, so you need to find a model that can sustain that change, or even better, find a good enough model now and tweak it later.
And last question for all three of you. What is the difference between sprint planning meeting and sprint retrospective meeting?
Yeah, that's easy. Alison, will you? Yeah. So sprint planning is something that you do before the sprint, obviously, when you plan for the things that you're going to do the next 2 weeks. And the retrospective?
Retrospective is where you look back at the last 2 weeks or whatever your sprint cycle is, and you look at how things have gone. So retrospectives can happen in a lot of different ways. You can go the really simple way of what went well, what didn't go well, and what can we improve. Or you can do anything you want. So I ran a really exciting one, which was based on the scientific method, where you could, which is nice because we're software developers, we're into science, and so if you bring it back to the scientific method and get everyone to agree on it, then it's really nice about what you're going to change.
So a big round of applause to all our guest speakers. Thank you very much for this awesome panel discussion. And you will see Alison a bit later on at her talk. Thank you, guys.